Yo, 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 yo. What's up? What's going on? What's good, everybody? That's right. We are here on August 18th, 2024. This is a Boxing Source podcast for August 18th, 2024. We are, here like reacting to what had been going down over the weekend. And I know that there was not that much activity, particularly in the boxing circles this past weekend or, Saturday. But we're going to talk about or chop it up in reference to that super middleweight fight that did take place over in Canada, and also probably touch on the heavyweight bout that was part of the co-feature, and also talk about one fighter there that was on the undercard that's in the lightweight division that has really been doing a lot in the lightweight division over the past year or so, pretty much from 2023 up until this year. So we're going to touch on that. Of course, we're going to get into Turki Alalshikh's comments in an interview that happened on X there a few days ago. And then also one little tidbit as far as like Shakur Stevenson and who he could potentially face next. But also just wanted to add in, if I have time, wanted to also, go into another particular thing that kind of been spread out through boxing circles that has really gotten a couple of people nerved a little bit, so to speak. So was going to kind of touch on that here as well in this particular podcast. So we got a number of topics here that we're going to break down, but also kind of like share some thoughts in reference to other topics within the sport of boxing here on this Boxing Source podcast. So we're going to get into it. We have the bout that did take place earlier, pretty much on Saturday there. You had there in the super middleweight division a super middleweight contender in Christian Mbilli there, who came in to this particular fight against Sergey Derevyanchenko with an undefeated record, coming in there with a record of 27 wins, 0 losses, 23 wins by way of knockout, highly ranked contender in the super middleweight division. He pretty much had stood at number one there in the WBC, right? And had been highly ranked there in the WBC, was number 2 in the WBA, number 3 in the IBF and the WBO, challenging Sergey Derevyanchenko, who was ranked at 7 in the WBC at the very least. We had his tough fight there against Jaime Munguia there. That was pretty much like a fight of the year candidate where Sergey Derevyanchenko fell short there against Jaime Munguia last year, suffering that knockdown in the last round. And that kind of, was the difference, pretty much the difference in the fight, so to speak. It could have been like a majority draw or something like that. Looked like 6 rounds to 6, but majority would have been the majority draw in the scorecards against Jaime Munguia. But with that knockdown in round 12, that was the difference there to kind of like have Jaime Munguia get that win last year, and that eventually had Munguia on the road to facing Canelo Alvarez, which happened earlier this year. So you had Sergey Derevyanchenko there with a record of 15 wins and 5 losses going into his bout, with 10 wins by way of knockout. Wanted to see, how Christian Mbilli would, fare against this, regular veteran. Of course, had his fights in the middleweight and super middleweight divisions, faced multiple, world champions there in the middleweight division there, and also faced that, world title challenger there in Jaime Munguia, and also faced Carlos Adames, who eventually became a world champion in the middleweight division there. So, we had, those particular losses there. None of them, he had never been stopped in any of those particular bouts. And, had a couple of close bouts there against, Daniel Jacobs, against Gennady Golovkin there. Had a, real close fight against Jaime Munguia as well here in the super middleweight division. But now was, going up against this, highly rising contender there in Christian Mbilli, originally from France, but has had the majority of his bouts here at this particular point in Quebec City. So this was kind of like a hometown fight of sorts there for Christian Mbilli there in the 168-pound division. And with Derevyanchenko, at this particular stage, he had been having a number of these fights there in that division, and was seeing here if he could get that one more shot to like kind of get back in the mix as super middleweight. But facing a guy there, very young, in Christian Mbilli, that didn't necessarily have the wear and tear, so to speak, right? And he didn't necessarily have the wear and tear there. So with Derevyanchenko, it was going to be a real tough battle for him against Christian Mbilli going into that fight yesterday. And my thing was, it's like for Mbilli, this would be an opportunity to like kind of like say, hey, even though I have all of these rankings there, they have me at the top 3 in these sanctioned body rankings and all that type of stuff. With this particular fight, I could see if I could kind of present myself as a serious contender there for the super middleweight titles. But in this bout, was a good little scrap, between these two fighters, particularly in the first couple of rounds. And the thing there was, and Billy was, kind of like trying to stay consistent in the pursuit of Sergey Derevyanchenko. Derevyanchenko was almost like in a counter-punching type of style. He was moving, backwards a lot, fighting off of his back foot, looking into, try to score with counter punches and that type of thing to take advantage of the aggression there of Christian Mbilli. But Mbilli was kind of like efficient, try to be as effective as he possibly could there against Derevyanchenko. So while Derevyanchenko was trying to look for the counter, didn't really have much, one, behind his punches, and two, that Mbilli kind of like blocked a number of those shots there, early in this particular fight. Those first 3 rounds, you can see that those were, Mbilli rounds, clear Mbilli rounds, even with Derevyanchenko like scoring some counter punches, maybe something where he, landed in the middle of a combination, but, the more effective shots, and you could see them, was definitely there from Christian Mbilli. Now, of course, 4th round was, kind of like a turnaround round where, we watched it, that we've seen Sergey Derevyanchenko visibly hurt there, due to what happened there with his bicep. So his left bicep was pretty much like done. He torn bicep. It was a wrap, so he really couldn't be active, with his left hand that much. So all he was doing was just throwing with his right hand, just backing up, throwing with his right hand, almost like doing a catch and shoot, throwing with his right hand and all that type of stuff. So that 4th round, you kind of like seeing him, he was like scoring very well, just having his left hand down. Well, you can't see, like, at least for me, you can't see with my left hand there in this particular instance. They had his left hand down, but he was able to score with his right. Whether he was like, kind of like making sure he was like out of range a little bit there for Christian Mbilli, or trying to slip the punch and then come back with the right hand. So for the majority of that 4th round, Sergey Derevyanchenko was scoring very well just with the right hand, and a number of people felt like he won that particular round. But with that left bicep being pretty much shot to pieces, that was basically it there for Sergey Derevyanchenko. He really couldn't get the offense that he needed going there against Christian Mbilli. And Christian Mbilli, kind of like took advantage of that in a sense, but not, at least for me, I didn't really see him kind of like take full advantage of the shortcomings there for Sergey Derevyanchenko. If you really are trying to, get your opponent out of there or try to take advantage of it, you got to kind of get yourself in range, set up the shots, and then land real big there with the right hand. And for Christian Mbilli, He did land some serious shots there, and yeah, Sergey Derevyanchenko took a lot of punishment, over those rounds and whatnot. But there was like no knockdown scored, over the course of the fight. Some people could say that, hey, maybe, if Sergey Derevyanchenko was knocked down at the very least, then maybe that would have had a little bit closer for this bout to be stopped. But it wasn't. And Sergey Derevyanchenko was still fighting. He was still, throwing some punches. He was able to lift up the left hand a little bit there in some cases, but not able to fully utilize it there in this bout against Christian Mbilli. And for Mbilli, it was just more about him, scoring big punches. And the thing was, we saw like the punch stats as far as like power shots landing there for Christian Mbilli. And it was like crazy out there, man. Real quick shout out to L Boxing in the building here on the live chat, man. Like I said, we talk about this Christian Mbilli Sergey Derevyanchenko fight. Derevyanchenko, man, just had that tough break with the torn bicep there, over the course of the fight. So he really couldn't use both hands in this one. But it had the thing there with Christian Mbilli, having that serious advantage, but wasn't able to, kind of like utilize that to go ahead and get a full stoppage victory. But, in the other sense, though, Sergey Derevyanchenko was taking a lot of punishment, particularly from like round 6 through round 9. And, in rounds 8 and 9, there was serious consideration that the corner would be able to stop the fight. And, you had, Andre Rozier, of course, the head trainer there for Sergey Derevyanchenko, like kind of, looking at his fighter, assessing him, seeing what he's saying, if he was, willing to go back out there or something like that. And, saying in between a couple of rounds, like he said, if we don't see that much effort, then we're going to, call it. But, for those that were like watching there through ESPN, you kind of like had that conversation there, of course, with the commentators saying like, listen, they really shouldn't have, Sergey Derevyanchenko go back out there for like the rounds 8 and rounds 9 or whatnot. But it still happened. Round 9 went through. He was taking a little bit more punishment, walked back to, the corner. And Andre Rozier said, hey, you think you could get through this? You think you could get through this? And, Derevyanchenko really kind of like didn't definitively answer him. But it was still like, he was still kind of coherent and whatnot. So he could still, hear what was going down. And he didn't look like he was like totally exhausted or something like that. But you could still see that he took a lot of punishment over, at least at that point, 9 rounds. So for him to go out to round 10, that was, kind of like crazy for some people to see that. But he was still able to get through a round 10 and not necessarily, have that much punishment in there in round 10, and was, throwing punches back and landing some shots back there on Christian Mbilli in round 10. So you were able to get through the full 10 rounds, but it was still like a unanimous decision victory for Christian Mbilli there. We had one scorecard where he won every single round there on one judge's scorecard. Efren LeBron scored at 100-90. Steve Weisfeld scored at 99-91. And Pascual Procopio, that's the judge's name there. He had it 98-92. So one clean sweep, one with a 9 rounds to 1, and another one with 8 rounds to 2, all in favor of Christian Mbilli for him to stay undefeated there. Now 28-0, and he had like a Continental America's super middleweight title there for the WBC, but he still like kind of keeps his standing there in the super middleweight division, right? And he had some comments after the fight, like saying like, hey, you've had these few fights. He's had wins there, against Derevyanchenko. We had that first round stoppage there against Mark Heffron there with a punch to the body a few months ago. Had like another fight back in January there where he got a salvage victory, and also defeated like Damon Nicholson back in September. So this had been 4 fights since September, or the beginning of September. So you had Christian Mbilli be fairly active there in the super middleweight division, and I know that there's been some suggestions as far as like what his potential next opponent could be, but he had been brought up as far as like if he's ready for a world title shot, and he felt like he was ready for a world title shot. And he wouldn't mention, of course, Canelo Alvarez there, but he's right there in line to like kind of be a contender for a world championship. Whether it's WBC belt, or it could be even the thing there with the IBF title, because IBF had basically been vacated there from Canelo Alvarez there, since the IBF had ordered the bout between him and Realm Skull. But Canelo ain't gonna have no fight with William Skull. But of course, y'all know he's having a fight with Edgar Berlanga, and a number of people ain't even really down with that Edgar Berlanga fight. But still, with Christian Mbilli, he's kind of like up there in the super middleweight division. That's been pretty active, so to speak, out there. Of course, we know about what's going down. You had the thing with Jaime Munguia. As I said, he's a recent signee of Top Rank, and has his fight that's coming up here pretty soon. So you're gonna have Jaime Munguia, there in the mix. Back in the super middleweight division, he's going up against Eric Bazinian on September 20th, Friday, September 20th. So if you have Jaime Munguia, if he's able to get a win here against Eric Bazinian, you might have something set up between Jaime Munguia and Christian Mbilli, which I think would be a very good fight there in super middleweight. You also have other contenders there with Diego Pacheco. We should have something coming up. Lester Martinez, who was part of the Pro Box TV card in DC. So a number of things, a number of potential matchups there at super middleweight that could kind of like see who could be part of that top area in the super middleweight division. Now, I know that there was like another fighter that was on that card that's at super middleweight in Osleys Iglesias there, that is ranked number 5 now. Yeah, he should be ranked like number 5 there in the WBC or something like that, had a real easy time, I say, there against Senak Beko. So like I said, I mean, you're gonna have a whole lot of activity there at super middleweight that could really mix things up and get things done there to kind of clear things out. We just wait for what happens here with Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga, and then after that, what is it going to be? Pretty much 4 weeks from now. Then we see what's going to happen with the rest of the super middleweight division. Yeah, Caleb Plant is also part of that card there with Canelo Alvarez going up against Edgar Berlanga. So you still have Caleb Plant. That would be a definite fighter there in the mix there within the super middleweight division. So we got to see what happens there with Caleb Plant as well. You know what I'm saying? But for Christian Mbilli, like I said, I'm waiting to see like how things will shape up there, particularly with that Jaime Munguia fight that's coming up against Eric Bazinian here in September, because you got Jaime Munguia currently ranked number 2 in the WBC. So you could have it to the point where we could see Christian Mbilli versus Jaime Munguia there, and it could be, whether it could be for the interim super middleweight title there for the WBC, or we just see what happens with Canelo after his bout against Edgar Berlanga, if he's gonna, entertain going up to 175 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So for Christian Mbilli, I mean, this was something where he did get a unanimous decision win there against Sergey Derevyanchenko. But for me, I'm looking at what Christian Mbilli is doing here, and it's like, does he have the overall tools to really like compete against those fighters that I mentioned, the Jaime Munguias, Alessa Martinez, like Alessa Martinez, maybe a Vladimir Shishkin, Diego Pacheco. You know what I'm saying? Those guys, pretty much up there at super middleweight and could really, make some noise in the super middleweight division out there. So I mean, I want to see if I could look up some ratings there at super middleweight, and you're going off the Transnational Boxing Rankings Board. You got Christian Mbilli currently ranked number 2 there as far as overall fighters at super middleweight. You got him above David Morrell Jr. and just below David Benavidez, and we all know that Benavidez and Morrell are now competing at 175. You know what I'm saying? So you could have it to the point where, by default, Christian Mbilli is the top rated fighter there in the super middleweight division, with the exception of course, of Canelo Alvarez. So my thing is, if you got Christian Mbilli out there against likes of Jaime Munguia or Iglesias or Pacheco, how would Christian Mbilli fare against those guys? I know that a number of people aren't necessarily saying, hey, put him in there against Canelo Alvarez, because a number of people wouldn't be interested in Canelo Alvarez facing a Christian Mbilli at this point. So that's why I couldn't put up there who else would be a good matchup there for Christian Mbilli. But I'm waiting for what's going to happen here with Jaime Munguia in his fight on September 20th against Eric Bazinian, because Munguia could get that win. Then you would have, Munguia versus Mbilli. I mean, it's almost like a tournament of sorts, because Eric Bazinian is currently ranked number 6 in the WBC rankings. You got Jaime Munguia there at number 2. So you could get maybe a de facto tournament there from Top Rank. And then, whoever wins that Munguia versus Bazinian, they'll be able to fight Christian Mbilli next. But I think, if you have, Jaime Munguia win that fight, that would set up a good matchup between Munguia and Mbilli. Would be interested to see where they would host that particular fight there for Top Rank. That would be something. Shout out to brother Steph here that's jumping in here through this live chat here or whatnot. But like I said, you had Christian Mbilli there getting that decision win over Sergey Derevyanchenko. Could have been, like I said, it could have been close to a stoppage, but looked like Derevyanchenko didn't necessarily say that he was kind of done. And the thing there with Coach Andre Rozier, he was still trying to have him be sent out there, even though at that particular point, at least after round 7, round 8, you really seen there with Sergey Derevyanchenko, he didn't really have much of a shot of getting back into the fight or seriously hurting Christian Mbilli in that. And the other story was in that particular instance, you had a chief second there for Sergey Derevyanchenko being really close to throwing in the towel, as he had the ear of Sergey Derevyanchenko's wife there that was kind of pushing to have the fight stop, but he wasn't necessarily throwing the towel there too. So that was a real interesting little back and forth that was going on in the corner there of Sergey Derevyanchenko. But Derevyanchenko was able to get through those 10 rounds, but what will that mean for him for this point forward? I mean, hey, the thing is, that was just his 20th professional fight or 21st professional fight actually there, and he had never been stopped. So 21 fights there, not 15-6, but he's there at 38 years old. So him being there at 38, that fight against Christian Mbilli was pretty much his last shot of being a real contender there at 168 pounds. And with him getting that loss, that, puts him down the pecking order once again. And, it would take a whole lot, for him to get right back in it. And how long would it take for him to get back in the mix there at super middleweight? And would it be worth it for him to kind of do that at this particular point, man? He says, Maurice Jones says, what's good, my brother, the Boxosaurus, a.k.a. former heavyweight champ and Hall of Famer Riddick Bowe. Salute to you, brother Maurice Jones, man. Thanks for joining in here on the live chat. Just seeing here, man, anyone that had thoughts about this, about between Christian Mbilli and Sergey Derevyanchenko, what's going on with that? Shout out to my brother, Major Key Boxing here, of course. Major Key Boxing, that's on YouTube as well. And you have Maurice Jones there, Four Corners Boxing, on YouTube as well, man. So salute to y'all here for joining in on the live chat. Like I said, I mean, you had, what was going down there in, what was it, Quebec City, right? And, for Christian Mbilli, he's had, those few fights there over in Quebec City. So he's built, a fan base out there in Quebec City, Quebec, or Montreal or something like that. He kind of has, a little bit of a following there, through Eye of the Tiger Promotions and all of that. So that's gonna, give him a little bit of motivation. I want to see if he can, go ahead and take advantage of that and see if he'll be a serious contender there at 168 pounds. We got brother Lonnie Lee in the building, live chat, man. Like I said, man, we had the thing there with Christian Mbilli getting that win over Sergey Derevyanchenko. At least going into the fight, I was thinking that maybe Mbilli would be the guy to, finally stop Sergey Derevyanchenko, and it was kind of close to it there with the amount of punishment. But there were like a couple of instances where you seen Christian Mbilli wasn't necessarily sharp and being completely effective in the power shots that he was throwing. And there was like a lot of wild shots that he was also throwing there against Sergey Derevyanchenko, man. Shout out Trill Clinton in the building. He says he's still trying to figure out if it's Mbilli's lack of creativity or Sergey's grit and ability to roll shots on why it went all 10 rounds. For me, I think I'm leaning more towards Mbilli's lack of creativity because I didn't see him, really set up traps or set up shots. And, even in the point where it was obvious that his corner kind of like told him or something like that, Sergey Derevyanchenko had an issue there with his left arm. So he really couldn't move his left arm. He really couldn't use it that much. So it was pretty much like down to, his side. So with that being said, you got the right hand pretty much open all day. And he couldn't really, and the thing with Christian Mbilli is he couldn't really put something together where he could like either do, like a touch and then boom with the right hand or something like that. But he was just more about, kind of like going over the top or, being wild with his power punches, So, and I say, on top of that too, you're going through round 7, 8, 9, and 10, and you kind of like seen it around like 6 and 7 for Christian Mbilli. He was a little bit tired. But then rounds 8, 9, and 10, he kind of like got a second win, and you could see him be more active with his punches. But it wasn't like it was very sharp enough to get the most out of him, so that when he did land, it would have seriously hurt Sergey Derevyanchenko. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. Like even like Derevyanchenko was still able to catch him there in the back half of the fight. You know what I'm saying? He was still able to catch him in the back half of the fight. Now there was like one instance where Sergey Derevyanchenko looked like he was gonna land a punch to the body, and they went all the way down to like Christian Mbilli's kneecap. He almost like got like shook up with that, man. So that was crazy. You know what I mean? But that was something. It says boxers including Canelo have been stripped from their belts for not fighting Derevyanchenko during his prime. So Major Key's leaning towards his winning experience. Yeah, I mean, Sergey Derevyanchenko, he was like number one contender for the IBF middleweight title when Canelo had the belts. And, Canelo didn't necessarily have that fight with Derevyanchenko, so he ended up getting stripped. So that's why you had that Derevyanchenko fight with Gennady Golovkin. And, a number of people said that Derevyanchenko should have gotten the decision in that, and he could have been a world champion in, but, it didn't necessarily, fare that way. And, who would have known, like, what would have happened if, Sergey Derevyanchenko would have had that decision win over Gennady Golovkin at that particular time? Like, how that would have affected, his career at that particular point. Like, even if he would have, like, had a rematch, or they would have had a rematch or something there with Gennady Golovkin, at least he would have had something, that thing where he had a win over Golovkin at that particular point, but they didn't necessarily get it to him. You know what I'm saying? So, that was a real tough break there for Sergey Derevyanchenko. And, like I said, fast forward right now with his loss to Christian Mbilli, where, he suffered that injury. And after that, he, lost a whole bunch of those rounds. Like, what is he going to do at this particular point? Especially with the injury, he's going to be out for an extended period of time. So it's going to be like, okay, is he, going to be willing to get himself back in there at 38 to have another fight in the super middleweight division where it's like, now who is he going to, end up facing? Would it be like a William Skull or, Malakuziev or something like that? If you go down the super middleweight rankings, what would be like an interesting fight there that Derevyanchenko would be able to take in order to try to get himself back in the mix? Like, I'm not all too sure, if he's going to be able to do that there. It's just going to take some time for, number one, him to completely heal from his torn bicep. And then number two, after that heals, him getting right back into camp for a fight that, I don't know, maybe not, interest him all too much there in the super middleweight division. So, yeah, it's going to be real tough to see what's going to happen there with Sergey Derevyanchenko at this particular point. And, it's something because, like I said, he's fought like a who's who there particularly in the middleweight division. And, was also going up to super middleweight division and also had that fight with Jaime Munguia too. That's another one where he was real close to, potentially maybe getting a win. And, had that knockdown in round 12 where that kind of like, switched everything up, So another tough break there for Sergey Derevyanchenko. On the flip side there, like I said, with Christian Mbilli keeping it standing there, the super middleweight division there, like I said, number one in the WBC. Also has that ranking of number 2 in the WBA and number 3 in the IBF and the WBO. Now it's like, what's next out there? I mean, you got Canelo, but would Canelo be interested in a fight with Christian Mbilli? Depends. Because I don't think it would be, Canelo after the fight against Edgar Berlanga that, Christian Mbilli would be able to wait and then have that fight against Canelo next. I say have Mbilli versus Munguia, and if he gets through that particular fight, then it's like, okay, now you could probably push for a fight against Canelo Alvarez if Canelo would, go ahead and accept that. But the likelihood of that fight happening like in May of 2025, yeah, I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying, man. Your shout Major Keys says Sergey could go ahead and beat up Berlanga after Canelo. And he's Puerto Rican / Dominican. Hey man, listen, well, I ain't gonna go into that much, but yeah, a lot of people aren't necessarily down with Edgar Berlanga there, so to speak. So we see what happens here September 14th in Las Vegas as Berlanga challenges Canelo for 3 of the 4 major titles there in the super middleweight division. But yeah, after that, Berlanga gets basically embarrassed by Canelo. Then yeah, you pretty much like have, I guess, Derevyanchenko versus Edgar Berlanga in that particular aspect. So that's kind of what we got there in the super middleweight division. Like I said, it's going to be pretty active here over the next few weeks there in the super middleweight division. And I kind of like to say there's a number of good fighters there at super middleweight where you could do a mix and match with a lot of those top contenders and get some good fights. One fight that's there at super middleweight that some people say is long overdue. If you follow the super middleweight division, is William Skull versus Vladimir Shishkin. They've been number 1 and number 2 in the IBF for like it almost seems like a full year plus now. Waiting to see what's going to happen with Canelo Alvarez, right? But when the IBF had ordered for Canelo to fight William Skull, of course Canelo was like, come on, man. It's William Skull, and you give up the IBF belt. It's like, hey, whatever. That's just less money that I have to pay out, right? So that's why the IBF title is vacant. So I've been waiting to see if they're going to make William Skull versus Vladimir Shishkin for that IBF super middleweight title. And Vladimir Shishkin is promoted by Dmitry Salita of Salita Promotions. And you know what? I'm going to see if I can catch up with Dmitry Salita and see if I could get an update on that, because we've been working on that fight for some time now. And with Vladimir Shishkin, he isn't necessarily trying to sit there and wait around for this type of stuff, but he had his last fight in March, and after that he's kind of like looking to see if he can fight William Skull. This time would be for the vacant IBF super middleweight title. So you got to see how that kind of like sorts itself out. You know what I'm saying? For those here that's listening live, if you're enjoying what's going down, you can hit the like button there, whether it's YouTube or Rumble. I think we're on Twitch as well, man. And we're also going to have, of course, this replay available here on podcast form, audio podcast form, there through those apps like Apple Podcasts and whatever you use to listen for your favorite podcast. Want to bring in our one of our great columnists here on this podcast. Checked out the fight card that happened last night. Giving an assessment here. It's our brother, the boxer academic, is in the building, man. What's going on with you?
How you doing tonight, JR?
Doing all good, man. Just chilling out, man. Had those fights, over in Quebec and whatnot. So just talking about the thing there with the main event. Want to get your thoughts on that there. What's going down with it?
Yeah, I mean, if the fight was 100% with everybody being, good, then I think it would have been a decent fight. But you got to give a lot of credit to what's my guy's name? I forgot his name. Derevyanchenko, because I mean he was facing a lot of adversity, and you could tell that he couldn't or didn't really want to use it because of the injury, and he still, I mean, he never stopped trying, right. And he gave as much as he could up until he really got tired, and you could just see the point where his right arm was tired, and then he started trying to throw the left arm, So you got to give a lot of credit to someone who is in the face of adversity and not just being like, oh, I quit. Because, right. A regular person, man, you've been like, nah, I want to, my bicep is torn. I want to protect myself, and these guys are gladiators. That guy's a gladiator. And everybody who gets in the ring and does it professionally, you got to take your hat off. And we see people who don't respond like that, but just even for them to just get in there, that you got to commend them. Now, on the other end, what does this say about Mbilli? What does this really say about him? Because he's a guy who throws these big shots. And I mean, he continues throwing the big shots later, I guess, into the rounds. But at some point, it's like he hit a wall, and he wasn't really throwing the big shots when dang, I don't forgot his name again. What's his name again? Derevyanchenko. See, I'm tripping. I'm sorry. When Derevyanchenko started jabbing and moving, like he didn't really know what to do. And so the path to beat him has been laid out by a one-armed fighter. And it's sad, but yeah, I'm not very high on Mbilli, because how does a one-armed man who can't even block the right side of his face, how does he not get bludgeoned? Yes, he got a lot of heart. You go answer the question. You got to answer. Go ahead, give me an answer.
Well, there was two things, with this, because the thing I was watching there from Christian Mbilli was, how would he be able to, take advantage of, this particular injury that was there. and up to a point, up to a point, it just didn't look like he knew how to set up, Derevyanchenko to kind of like break him down and end up stopping him or landing like big right hands. But on the flip side too, like the thing with Christian Mbilli, he also suffered an injury himself during this fight. But
what was his injury?
To his shoulder, right? So,
well, I thought you were gonna say his pride because he couldn't get out a one-arm fighter.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Some people could probably still say that because you could still see that Christian Mbilli was still throwing, with both, both his left and his right hands, So it was like, okay, why couldn't he figure out how to, take advantage of that injury that he saw initially and go through that, yeah, he ended up injuring his left shoulder in this particular fight, but he still was still throwing punches and still very active
question question hey, appreciate it, Major Key. I can remember that. Appreciate it. See, why didn't JR just tell me Sergey when I was over here struggling and stuff? JR don't want to see me be bright. I'm just playing. But I was trying to think of another word. That's all I could think of. So at what point did they say his shoulders were? I'm not saying I don't believe, but I'm just saying at what point did they say it? Was it after the fight?
That was the thing. I didn't see, like, they didn't kind of like point out when and Billy injured his left shoulder. Like, we only see like the thing where Sergey Derevyanchenko had visibly injured his left bicep. You know what I mean?
But how you find out? Did they say it after at the press conference?
After the fight. Yeah, they said after the fight.
Isn't that very convenient that after the fight, when you didn't knock out a one-arm fighter, that the reason is because your shoulder is hurt, which could be true. Maybe I'm not gonna watch the fight again, but maybe somebody else will watch the fight and they will corroborate that. But what this tells me about Mbilli, I'll give two scenarios if the shoulder was actually hurt and if it was not hurt, just to be devil's advocate here.
Okay.
If the shoulder was hurt, okay, you give him some grace and you're like, maybe he could have got him out, even though you can tell there are some things that he won't be able to do or that he needs to bring somebody in to teach him to be able to do. To your point, how to set up those shots. Yeah, you throw those big shots, but there are ways that you set them up outside of just throwing the overhands and them big looping hooks and overhand shots and stuff. Like, everybody ain't gonna be able to just get hit with that because they gonna see it coming from a mile away. Yeah, you can throw them punches up until round, until you get tired, but that ain't gonna just work with everybody. It didn't work with a one-arm fighter. And let's say his arm was not hurt. Like, yeah, somebody who can keep him on the distance,
right,
and then walk him into them shots when he try to throw them big looping and hooking and overhanding and all that stuff, and just walk him into shots. He's got a specimen of as they would say in the UK for Anthony Joshua, of a Greek god. No pause or whatever. I ain't saying that. It's a neutral comment.
Right. Yeah.
It's a neutral comment. Don't clown me, boxing Twitter. But outside of him working out and pumping iron and stuff, it's gonna be a plateau that he reached because let somebody be able to really fight. Yeah, he ain't gonna make it past them.
Yeah, word. Because I mean, the thing is, it's like he doesn't necessarily. He's like very compact, so to speak. When he does it, it's not like how you have something like Mike Tyson, where Mike Tyson could be bob and weaving and just be short, quick and everything like that. It's like to a point where you're utilizing all of your energy to like throw power shots, whoosh, 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 and then you get to an instance where he gets tired. You know what I'm saying? You get tired, and so that's going to be a problem for him later down the line there in the super middleweight division as he faces other contenders at super middleweight. That's why, before you jumped on here, I said that there would be a potential matchup between Christian Mbilli and Jaime Munguia, with Munguia being a recent signee to Top Rank and has an upcoming fight against Eric Bazinian on September 20th. So Munguia gets through that particular fight and wins against Eric Bazinian. Probably the more obvious thing to do is to have Munguia versus Mbilli there for what could be maybe the WBC interim title there at super middleweight. So we got to see how that goes. Salute to 2 Cents Boxing. There, had a great conversation earlier, reference to Boxing Talk there, of course, through Angry Man Sports Media. You can also check out 2 Cents Boxing here on YouTube. And, of course, our brother Jay Pylon is here in the building as well. Salute to you. Also has his channel there on YouTube as well. And shout out to everyone that's listening live. If you can, just hit the like button to support the Boxing Source here on this thing as we continue the discussion. You had like something additional there as far as like with Christian Mbilli.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Jaime Munguia. The crazy thing is that Mbilli is probably limited enough to where Jaime Munguia could outbox him, which is crazy to say, right? Jaime Munguia could probably outbox him.
Mm-hmm. But before before Munguia's bout against Canelo Alvarez, like Munguia had a couple of instances there, in this fight against Derevyanchenko and his win against John Ryder, where he was boxing very well, particularly in that Ryder fight. There he was showing some good elements, and you kind of like seen it in spurts against Canelo Alvarez up until that knockdown that happened in round 4 too. So yeah, Munguia would probably be somebody that could end up being a bad matchup there for Christian Mbilli. There, if Mbilli doesn't, sharpen up his thing there. And I know Mbilli's coach there, Mark Ramsey, gives Mbilli high praises. This is the same, coach Mark Ramsey that also trains Artur Beterbiev. But Beterbiev is a whole different animal in comparison to Christian Mbilli there. So you definitely have that. You know what I mean? So you had that fight there at the main event there in Quebec City, and then you also had in the co-feature bout. They only had 2 bouts featured there on the ESPN portion of this fight card. You had Arslanbek Makhmudov against Guido Vianello there in the heavyweight division, and Makhmudov had been built up as this big dude. What was it like about 6'5", 255, 260. Just running through everybody and
don't forget the twitch. That shit was scary.
Yeah, you got that too, right? And he was just stopping everybody up to a certain point last year, and then he faces Agi Cabio in that the Day of Reckoning fight card over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and Agi Cabio pieces him up, and puts him down 3 times and stopping him with a body shot. And when you have something there where you got a guy that looks the part, has these wins, looking like he's going through everybody, looking like an unstoppable force, and then one dude just comes in there and beats him up, and I mean beats him up, then that kind of like gets that aura of invincibility out the window. So with Makhmudov loses that fight a few months ago, he has like another fight over there in Canada. He kind of like builds his record up, has an easy fight. It's 2-round, KO thing. Now he goes up against Guido Vianello there in what is it like? Since it's like a top ranked card, you got a top ranked guy, Vianello, who had his bout there against Efe Ajagba in his last bout, where he didn't necessarily win the fight, but he was still competitive in a sense there against Efe Ajagba. And in one sense, one judge gave him 6 rounds to 4 there for Efe Ajagba, but he still ended up short in that bout. But here against Arslanbek Makhmudov, he was able to get through those first few rounds, and there was like, I don't know if it was a punch or elbow or head clash, whatever it is, that kind of like damaged the eye there of Arslanbek Makhmudov. But after that happened, oh man, that gave Guido Vianello confidence. He was just, scoring points, throwing the jab, piece the men, moving in and out, blah, 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 and everything. And of course, our guy Box Academic, has, that nickname there for Joe Joyce. But listen, you could pretty much have that same nickname there for Arslanbek Makhmudov because, man, he is just bad slow, number one. And two, he just punches whatever, man. He'll go behind the head, around it, and all that type of stuff, man, to like throw some punches. But, after about, a few rounds there, it like rounds like 5, 6, and 7, you seen, that eye get worse and worse and worse. And then there, and the thing with the round 8, when round 8 started, this is like the second time the doctor, had Makhmudov go up to him, right? And it was funny as he's like, okay, how many fingers am I holding up? And Makhmudov says 3. And doctor was like, I don't care. I stop you. And then that was it. That was the fight that was done. I'm like, I was like, they could have stopped the fight earlier because that eye was just really, really bad there from rounds like 5 and 6. So it wasn't like, Makhmudov could really do something to, kind of like turn the fight around. I know that he has some power, but it just didn't seem like he was going to be able to land it because he certainly couldn't see that jab from Guido Vianello there in that particular instance. So Guido gets the stoppage victory, and he might be back in the mix there because funny thing about it with this particular fight is that before the fight took place, you had the WBC rankings be released, and it had Arslanbek Makhmudov rated at number 9 in the WBC. So he had at least a top 10 rating in the WBC there before his fight against Guido Vianello, and he ends up getting stopped once again. So that's 2 losses, 2 stoppages. And for Guido Vianello, this is a definite boost there for him in his pro career and could set up some potential matchups out there for Guido Vianello or whatnot. You know what I mean? Hey man. Now that's one person I haven't necessarily gotten a voice down, but there's been rare instances where people say that I look like George Foreman. So you definitely had that there, man, with Guido Vianello. And it could open the door there for Guido to get some bouts there in the heavyweight division. I know that Top Rank has a number of fighters out there at heavyweight. Well, it might not get, a rematch there with Efe Ajagba, but you could have something maybe with Guido Vianello and Jared Anderson, depending on what, the direction is for Jared Anderson, of course, after his loss to Mark Bacoli there on August 3rd, so we got to see like what could be out there for Guido there. This is a definite boost back. I don't know if they'll put him in there with Richard Torres or not, because they trying to build up Richard Torres as well there in the heavyweight division. I also see what's up with Damian Neba there that's at the heavyweight division, because he's also has some fights there under Top Rank. So I gotta see if he could be back in the mix there. What was it? Yeah, his last fight hadn't been in since last December against Mike Coffey. So we got to see what's going to be up there with Damian Neba as well there in the heavyweight division. All those guys are there within Top Rank, where they could do some things there. Frank Sanchez, Seth says Frank Sanchez would be nice for Guido. I got to see what's up with Frank Sanchez as well. I don't know if he is still under that whole thing with the PBC banner or not. But he had that loss to Agit Cabello. Like, Cabello has been, probably one of the more impressive heavyweights there over the past like 9 months with those two big wins, right? You get stoppage wins over Arslanbek Makhmudov and Frank Sanchez. That's something there. Now the thing with Frank Sanchez though, in that fight against Age Cabello, one, he didn't look all good as far as like his overall weight, and then two, looked like he was dealing with a leg injury, so he couldn't really move like he wanted to move there against Age Cabello. But still, nonetheless, Cabello gets that win, gets the stoppage win, and really boosts his standing there in the heavyweight division. I got to see how that would fare there for Cabello in that instance. But back to the thing there with Guido. With Top Rank, they got all those dates there with ESPN. They have of course what happens over in December. I know they got something set up for October, but that's going to be over in Norfolk. Should be in Norfolk, either October or November. I gotta confirm that. I think it may be November. They're gonna plan on having a Keyshawn Davis and Kelvin Davis they're over in Norfolk, their home area. So see if they have a fight card there with that. But with Guido, with him fighting in August, maybe they'll get him back in the ring in December. They have their thing, of course, Heisman weekend over in New York City. So you could probably see Guido there on that. You know what I mean? So that could be something there for Guido Villanello there in the heavyweight division. Box Academic, not sure you were able to catch that part of that heavyweight bout or whatnot.
Yeah, I saw it. Point one, I don't think I could give him the title of Slugfist Makhmudov because he fights sort of like he got T-Rex arms. And what I mean by that, he throw punches, but it's something about the way he throw the punches that they don't quite get there. Maybe he throw behind, or maybe it is the fact that you are right that he throws so wild that they just be all over the place. But it just seemed like he either be thinking about punching and his arms are always bent, and then he just never get the punch out there, and it just feels sort of like T-Rex arms. But the fanboy in me is going to make this comment. Why not give Deontay Wilder this guy? Like, if y'all want Deontay Wilder to stay in the sport, why not give him somebody like this to build his confidence up? Like a few fights like this. But I'm going to leave that alone. As far as the fight went, like you said, the veil is off his eyes. I mean, the guy was already not great even in his wins, because you saw the deficiencies and you just really needed someone to take advantage of that. And then essentially once people saw that he can't fight someone sort of boxing and moving and making him reset, and then he just essentially walk into shots and don't keep his hands up, it's the story is out on him now. Like, just move a little bit, make him walk into shots, and then hit him a few times, and then either his body gonna break down and or you can knock him out, because it's the heavyweight division.
Yeah,
he ain't that good. I respect what he does, but I don't think that his skill set bodes well for him, because now at this point he's compromised neurologically. Like you can tell once he get hit with certain shots, his bell just get rung. And then once you get to that point, like, do you really need to be fighting when you get concussed like after just one shot? Like that Deontay Wilder's at that point. Makhmudov is at that point. It's plenty of people at that point where they just get hit with one shot and then they just get glassed over. Shoot, even Anthony Joshua, I think he ain't as far gone as these other guys, but he's been doing better with his defense, Anthony Joshua, or his offense, which leads to defense. But yeah. But it was a decent fight. I guess Makhmudov is just gonna be used to like advance other people and stepping stone, and you just see where you want to gauge them, how much you can gauge a guy, and or if you just need somebody in there just to give you a decent fight that's gonna take a little bit of punishment. But what I will say, I remember in his last fight, or one of his last fights, something about his heart. I don't remember exactly, but I remember questioning something about him. Is that right? Is that true?
Maybe he, with Markmanov, he was part of, I don't know if it was on ESPN or not, but last year he was on that Jared Anderson, Charles Martin fight card. So maybe it was something there in that. I don't know, but that was like a 2-round bout. But he's fought like Carlos Takam, he's fought, beat Marius Watts, even Samuel Peter, like he even fought Samuel Peter in 2019. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's some of these names are pretty notable. He also fought like Johnny Rice, who ended up getting that stoppage victory over Guido Vianello some time back. So there's been some names on his resume there, in his 21 bouts, but it's just that these two that he had against, of course, Agi Cabial, and now against Guido Vianello, it's where he just ends up being like his era of invincibility, so to speak, is just out the window now.
Yeah. The question I would ask, how old was Samuel Peter? He was right. Probably fighting for money just to hear his name fighting this guy in a different era.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder what's wrong with his condition to make him twitch, and I wonder if that has anything to do with. I mean, he done got hit too much. That's the problem, that he done got hit too much.
But it's interesting because he's part of the same camp as Christian Mbilli and Artur Beterbiev. They're the trainers all the same. Mark Ramsey, so he has at least those three fighters there in his stable. So I wonder, like, what he was doing there as far as like working with Beterbiev and all that type of stuff there to kind of like get ready for these fighters. But they say with Makhmudov, he just didn't necessarily get all the tools, so to speak, as far as like his abilities there in reference to like maybe a Christian Mbilli, and especially like with Artur Beterbiev, that he didn't, he doesn't have like that complete arsenal to really be a serious contender there in the heavyweight division.
So he doesn't have the complete arsenal, yes, but it explains it. It explains why he is neurologically compromised outside of his fights. If he getting hit by Beterbiev and Mbilli every day, then that's probably why he more compromised at this point, like going into fights, and then he get concussed so quickly outside of like just getting hit so much. Because out of everybody in the gym, everybody throw a bunch of shots, and he essentially the punching bag.
Yeah, it's always like looking like it, but it's like, man, and that's the thing, man. It like when you have like those type of fighters there in your stable, and with Makhmudov, of course he was like, building his way back up or whatnot. But going up again, in instance of adversity, it's almost like he folded really quick. So I don't know, maybe he took like too much punishment in the camp there with the likes of a Beterbiev and a thing there with Christian Mbilli, because you kind of like get two different spectrums. With Beterbiev, like every single thing is sharp and he gets right to it. So whether it's a jab, it's like, there's like a little bit of an oomph behind that jab, or body shots, or big power shots upstairs. And with Christian Mbilli, you're dealing with the guy that he does have a jab, but he really is relying a lot on the power shots that he throws too. So that could be something there to consider when it comes to Arslanbek Makhmudov. Is what had he been dealing with in the gym in preparation for his fights there at heavyweight. So that's kind of like something right there.
He ain't getting away from them shots.
No, he definitely not. Definitely not. You also like had in the lightweight division, you had Abdullah Mason there. Of course, is like one of the phenoms, young phenoms there at the lightweight division, just 20 years old, and this was like his fourth fight this year already. Like we just saw him over at the Prudential Center, part of that ESPN card there in Newark, New Jersey, where he ended up stopping Luis LeBron within 3 rounds. And here he is against Mike Ohan Jr. in first round. He lands like a counter uppercut that put Ohan down to the canvas in the first round, and then he was able to knock down Ohan in the second round. And the corner came in and said, "Nah, man, this is it, man. We don't want to see our guy get punished here anymore." So second round, like TKO victory there for Abdullah Mason. 15 wins, 13 KOs. Man, he is like really doing some work there in the lightweight division. At least as of right now, I don't see him ranked in the lightweight division, but I mean, he's the goods, man. He's the goods. I see him getting back in the ring probably in November or December there in the top ranked card. You know what I'm saying? Well, let me see. Yeah, I'll answer you there, Steph, on that instance, man. So I like to see more of Abdullah Mason here this year, man. If he I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they have another fight here set up for him, and he have 5 fights this year. He had 5 fights in 2023, so he's been building up that record, and that's one thing with like Top Rank. Sometimes they're able to build a lot of these young fighters and get them in the fights and just keep building them up, and then seeing how they're going to do once they have a established record here, so to speak. Whether it's lightweight division, super lightweight, or whatever. It's just that recently we hadn't necessarily seen it from Top Rank when it comes to fighters that are at the top of the division. We got this thing here with lightweight. They had Shakur Stevenson, you have Keyshawn Davis, you have Raymond Murataya, you have Vasyl Lomachenko. All of those guys are pretty much there around the top of the lightweight division, but we have not had any fights, between those guys. So it's like, okay, y'all build them up, but what is going to be the payoff point where you have those guys fighting each other and really build a intriguing bout where a lot of fight fans will be interested in seeing what's going to go down with them. You know what I mean? So I like to see what's going to happen next there for Abdullah Mason. Hey, listen, I say this. I'm looking at some of these rankings here in the lightweight division, and I'm seeing some fighters that, hey, maybe he could go ahead and clip them. He can go ahead and clip them. I mean, there's been some people that mention Lucas Badi, who knocked out H2O Silva there in that the MVP card sometime back, or that was last month. That maybe you could have Abdullah Mason face Lucas Badi, but I don't know. But it's something where you can say, hey, you know what? Abdullah Mason has the tools to really do some work there in the lightweight division, but I don't think they're gonna put him in there with someone like a Lucas Badi as of yet. But we'll see how that goes there. Steph here says Abdullah Mason, he says, gives hope in boxing. His prominence will probably come higher than 135. Yeah, because I mean he's just 20 years old, so he's gonna go up a couple more divisions there, man. But it says come out after watching him fight 4 fights ago. Yeah. It says, wow, his natural skills remind him of Tank Davis. When he hits his mark with power punch wise, yeah. As far as impact with his power shots, yeah, I can see that because whether it's the quickness that he's able to do it and enough power behind it, it kind of has that type of element. So I can kind of see that. You know what I mean? I kind of see that there with Abdullah Mason, but still has a lot that he could do here. Like I said, just 20 years old, man. So it's definitely a big thing there to wait to see what's going to be happening next there for Abdullah Mason. So that that's pretty much what I wanted to go through in that particular card. Got to get to these couple other topics that we have here. So a few days ago, we had like a conversation there. There was an interview of sorts that went down on the Twitter Spaces or X Spaces or whatever you want to call it there with Turki Alalshikh, and he had a couple of comments in reference to a few things that were going on in boxing. He was talking about the boxing event that happened in Los Angeles and whatnot, right? So one of the things that was kind of like put out there was in reference to Terence Crawford, and of course, we had this fight there in LA against Ezra Madrimov or whatnot, and was able to get a win. And then was trying to see what would be next out there for Terence Crawford. And Turki Alalshikh was pretty much saying like Terence Crawford's basic interest is a fight with Canelo Alvarez, and that he continue to tell Turki Alalshikh that is the fight that he wants, and see if you could work for that particular fight, and that he isn't necessarily interested in any other fight. He mentioned thing with their Virgil Ortiz. Of course, Virgil Ortiz had that recent win over Sergey Derevyanchenko. And he also mentioned Boots Ennis, who, said like, hey, we talked with Turki Alalshikh along with Eddie Hearn and said, hey, we would be interested in having a fight with Terence Crawford. But as of right now, Terence Crawford isn't necessarily interested in that. He's interested in, going after Canelo Alvarez and seeing if that happens. And as of right now, that fight looks like it's a slim chance of happening. Canelo, of course, had his comments there in that Los Angeles presser with Edgar Berlanga, where he said, listen, right now, my focus is, with Edgar Berlanga, so I'm not going to be, talking about business, about any other fights or anything like that until, this thing here with Edgar Berlanga is done. But he's also like, you can't necessarily say you can come in here and say, hey, we can do this with you, we can do that with you. You know what I mean? So, but I find it interesting there for Terence Crawford that he says that he's only interested in fighting Canelo Alvarez because, you have the whole thing there with the schedule of Canelo Alvarez. He pretty much like fights there with the cycle, 2 fights a year, 1 fight in May, 1 fight in September. So with Terence Crawford, it's like, okay, you just fought in August. Are you willing to wait until May 1 if you're able to actually get the fight? But if you don't, or if there's like no real intentions or no real interest from Canelo Alvarez about that, then what are you gonna do? Because it's not like you're quote unquote spring chicken. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be able to stay active and stay active. So whether it's against a Virgil Ortiz or Boots Ennis or anybody else out there in 154, I say you got to be active. I mean, shoot, you still have the whole thing where Crawford was initially the number 1 contender or the mandatory challenger for the WBO title, which is currently held by Sebastian Fundora, and you didn't even hear anything about Crawford's having any interest in fighting Sebastian Fundora. So with that being said, okay, so is your plan not to fight again this year? I'm like, having those like 1 fight a year, I don't know if that's all too good for Terence Crawford. I mean, we've seen what happened here again in his fight against Israel Madrimov. It took him some rounds to like really get, really get in the gear, so to speak. So I don't know if having that, mentality of Canelo or nothing is a good thing there for Terence Crawford. You got any thoughts on that, Box Academic? See if
yeah. I'm so sorry. I was looking at 2 things at once. Can you say the last sentence? I was listening.
Yeah, multitasking. No, I was saying, with Terence Crawford, there, of course, he had his fight against Israel Madrimov, there a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. And looks like with his plans, if he's going after Canelo Alvarez, that means you're not going to see Terence Crawford fight again this year. So whether he gets the Canelo fight or not, it doesn't really look like he's going to have another fight this year. Is that good for Terence Crawford at this particular point, given that he only had, the one fight against, first, what was it? The thing there with David Avanesian, right? Then you had the one fight against Errol Spence. And then you're going to have this one fight against Israel Madrimov, and then that would be it for 2024. Like, is that a good thing for Terence Crawford to have just one fight a year, so to speak?
I would say in all scenarios, no. However, it does appear that there is an active sort of agenda for him to only fight once. And maybe, with him getting older, this is him preserving himself. Who knows? But objects in motion stay in motion. Objects at rest stay at rest. And so he got to get the engine revved up in 3-4 rounds, which he did a great job because, I don't remember my scorecard, but what I do remember, he won them first few rounds with his jab, and I just think, though, if he actually is trying to unify the division, which will probably be his toughest route to a undisputed title, then he gonna need to, have some momentum. And the way that he get at these guys is by making sure that he's sharp, not like getting his senses back in the ring as he fights. So it would be nice to see him fight again before he tries to take on somebody at 154. Like, I mean, him fighting Canelo, it's going to be more interesting than what we think because Canelo is big. But if he can box and he's powerful enough to keep Canelo off of him, I mean, he could be sort of like a bee, sort of like stinging Canelo in the face and stuff, and staying away from him. But I think it would matter more to boxing fans, to the casual, to everybody else. I mean, the Canelo fight matters more, but I would prefer him to be undisputed at 154 because that will cement him as. I don't like speaking on who's the best in across different eras because I haven't watched everybody enough to know how the level of competition was, like how we can discern now Sean Porter's place in all of these fights. We can discern Errol Spence's place. We all know that Terence Crawford is the number one guy, but we can discern this. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that with all the fights from yesteryear. Yeah. And so there's no way I can compare those because I don't have enough information outside of what people say. If he fights more, then he can unify and be undisputed in this division. And to me, that will cement him truly in that conversation where he can be like, hey, I'm on par with Floyd. I'm on par with whatever. I'm the best of my era. I'm the best of my era, which he is, right? But like this will be, to me, will be the realest undisputed, in my opinion. Just because the guys ain't gonna fold. Like, yeah, we expected Spence too, but I mean, obviously Spence is compromised neurologically. But yeah, so I hope he don't go after Canelo and he actually unifies.
Yeah, 154. And the thing is, the way that 154 is basically like, I mean, you had it with the run of 2019 to 2022, where eventually Jermell Charlo ended up becoming the undisputed champion, right? So now, after Jermell Charlo going up against Canelo Alvarez last year, all of the belts have basically been split up. So you had the thing there where you had Tim Tszyu as a world champion. You had the thing there where you had two vacant titles that were basically won. Israel Madrimov won one, and Murtazaliev won the other. And then eventually with Tim Tszyu fighting Sebastian Fundora this year, the WBC title was added. So Sebastian Fundora now has two of those major titles. You got Murtazaliev there with the IBF belt, and now you have Terence Crawford with the WBA belt. Now, with Murtazaliev, they're about to set up that fight between him and Tim Tszyu for that IBF title. And now we got to see what's going to be up with Sebastian Fundora. Like, is he going to fight Errol Spence, or is Errol Spence still on the shelf. So that's the thing, though. If you have Errol Spence and he isn't necessarily close to like getting back in the ring, we're in August. They were talking about him fighting in October or November, and well, I mean, we don't have anything here as of now in reference to that. So let's just say that Errol Spence isn't back in the mix here for now. You have the announcement there from Jermell Charlo that he's going to get back in there and back in at 154. And it's been mentioned he is the WBC champion in recess. So if he wants to get back in the ring, he could, say, you know what? I want to be back and I want to face Sebastian Fundora for that WBC title. He has that. He has that right. So maybe you could see, Jermell Charlo versus Sebastian Fundora there at 154. But that just says like how much is going on within that particular division and how Terence Crawford could be in the mix and say, hey, let me go through these particular fighters here over the next year and a half and see if I could become undisputed at 154. I would like to see if he'd be able to do that and try to go after Canelo Alvarez. You know what I mean? So that's the thing there with Terence Crawford. But as long as he has that intent on facing Canelo, and if he's did sit on that, then yeah, we might not see Crawford back in the ring there for some time again.
But I mean, yes, I would like to see him unify. But if he saying let him get his nest egg, can I really be mad at him? As far as like legacy, all that stuff, I mean, it'd be nice to see him unify and fight guys that are going to test him. I think he'll be favored in a lot of these fights, and he'll probably win them all. He gonna end up on top. But shit, let's see him go. I want to see him go against guys that people gonna project maybe to beat him. They'll project it being closer than than 70-30 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 60-40 on some fights. I mean, it's just nice to see him because we gonna get to see him raise his level and just probably see a side of him. We gonna see him probably get hurt too and see him how he responded to that.
Right.
Because the last time we seen him respond to that was Mean Machine.
Mm-hmm.
He responded well.
Yeah, he did. He did. And I think, like I said, if he has those types of instances where he deals with adversity here at 154 and is able to get through that and still get those wins, then that would, kind of like build up, build his legacy, so to speak. But, as of right now, it's like, he does have those accolades. But, we've kind of like gone through it, multiple times here on this podcast in reference to Terence Crawford's overall resume. So you got to see like how he's going to be able to do, the work there at 154 if he's interested in doing that at 154 pounds. But, that remains to be seen. Now, just got two topics here I'm going to try to tackle here. The next one, joint, is in reference to, as I say, as Shakur Nafis Shahid Stevenson or Shakur Stevenson, since, you don't necessarily go through all those names there. But Shakur Stevenson, of course, the WBC lightweight champion. We had his recent fight there in Newark, against Artem Harutyunyan. Had that win, went through those rounds and everything like that. And that ended up being his last bout under Top Rank Boxing. And so, over this past month plus, he's been, going around as a free agent and talking with multiple promotional bodies. Now, there had been a suggestion that he could also be, talking with Turki Alalshikh and getting a potential fight with Turki Alalshikh. But what it recently has been surfaced is reports about him potentially having a bout where he has a voluntary defense of that WBC lightweight title, which I'm not necessarily, I don't know where it's coming from, but there is some reports that he could be facing Joe Cordina in a bout that could be involved in a, Riyadh season, Turki Alalshikh type of a thing. Now, Joe Cordina, it was ranked in the WBC. Okay. He is ranked, I think it was what I got, number 13 in the WBC. Now, the thing about it is that this is the same Joe Cordina that was the former IBF champion at super featherweight. And it was a few months ago that he got, blasted by Anthony Casasi there and got, knocked out in the 8th round there for him to lose that IBF super featherweight title. So one, I find it real interesting that, after that loss, the WBC puts him in the lightweight rankings there at number 13. And, that had got people saying that maybe that's going to be the opponent there for Shakur Stevenson. But I'm like, how is that particularly possible? But hey, we got to see what's going on, because in a couple of days, there's supposed to be the deadline for negotiations between Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda. They're supposed to have a scheduled purse bid for August 20th. So my thing is, it's like, okay, what's going on with that? Is it that they have broken negotiations between Shakur Stevenson and William Zepeda? Because their scheduled purse bid is on August 20th. Unless they say, hey, maybe we'll push the purse bid, or they have something where it's like, okay, now you can't necessarily have that fight happen. So it's kind of, interesting there, man. You said what Joe Cordina showed promise early in that fight, but got smoked. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Fighting Shakur right after that, a good idea. Yeah, I don't know, but it's more on the side of Shakur Stevenson. Like, why would he go ahead and have a fight with Joe Cordina? Now, the only thing I could see there is like, hey, I got 3 to 3.5 million or 3 million per fight, under the top ranked contract that I had there, where I got 3 million guaranteed. But after that, they didn't want to give me more than 3 million. So he ends up fighting Joe Cordina for a little bit north of 3 million. That's crazy work. That's crazy work if he's able to pull that off. But I'm still, holding on to seeing if Shakur Stevenson could end up facing William Zepeda, because that would be a really, really good fight there in the lightweight division. You know what I mean? So I wanted to see how that goes. Also, he had something there. I think Brother Steph kind of brought it up. But there was like other reports in reference to the current IBF welterweight champion, Jerome Businis. Of course, he had his fight over in Philadelphia Wells Fargo Center last month. And you're trying to see what would be next up there for Jerome Businis. Now, the IBF had, released their rankings some time back, and they put in Karen Chikadzian at number 1 in the welterweight rankings. So that kind of like had people, jumping into, maybe they'll have a fight between Boots and Chikadzian and make the Chikadzian the mandatory challenger. And yeah, there was a conversation there with Eddie Hearn, of course, who's now the promoter for Jerome Businis, saying that the IBF has ordered Businis versus Karen Chikadzian. Listen, up to now, I have not seen anything there from the IBF in reference to that. Because listen, some of y'all know, who I know. And of course, your guy, shout YSM. And thing about it is, it's like, listen, if folks think that Jerome Businis is going to face Karen Chikadzian once again, whether he's a mandatory or not, that just makes absolutely zero sense. It makes no sense from a financial perspective. Makes no sense from your actual contender's perspective. Like, why would Businis like even entertain that? That wouldn't make much sense, right? So, reports have basically been out that the offers have been sent out to Mario Barrios and also Brian Norman to have a unification. So Boots is looking for unifications right now. So if there was like any possibility that a fight between Jerome Boots Ennis and Karen Chikagian gets made again, it's because those offers were basically turned down, you know. So that's the thing about it, you know. And that's the thing. Yeah, and I know, listen, I know what, I know what my guy L-Dub said, but come on. Y'all know that my guy YSM is just right there with Boots. So, like, if there was like anything they would know or he would know about it, then he'll be able to tell people. But like, I just don't see why Boots Ennis would even, try to do that. You know what I mean? That just makes no sense to me. You know what I mean? So we got to see what happens here over the next, couple weeks, a few days. Like I said, with the IBF, I haven't seen any particular announcement there or formal announcement that Karen Chikagian is the mandatory challenger. The last thing I see here is, something in reference to the IBF heavyweight championship. But yeah, outside of that, I don't see anything where it says that, the IBF has ordered Karen Chikagian as a mandatory challenger for Jerome Boots Ennis there. So there's that. With that being said, man, that is about what, hour and a half here on this particular podcast. That's mainly what I wanted to cover. We really don't have that much activity in the boxing scene here for a good little minute. You know what I mean? So yeah, like the next thing that I see coming up is Naoya Inoue there versus CJ Doheny, man. Outside of that, there really isn't much action, at least for the rest of this month. So we got to wait until September for things to like pick back up. So that's pretty much maybe what I had. Anything there from you, Box Academic, before I roll?
No, nothing from me.
All right, gotcha. So big thanks for everyone that was able to listen in live. For those that caught in late, you can catch the replay. Here, we're also going to have this available in audio form, podcast form also there. We have of course, there, Brother Seth, we have that fight on ProBox TV with Jared Hurd versus Jason Rosario. Midweek report. Hopefully, I'll be able to have something on the midweek report before that fight goes down there. So you'll be able to check that out. So with that being said, big thanks for everyone that's listening to the Boxing Source podcast. And I will check y'all later, man. Peace out.